Who's keeping time? Control. Yeah, you're keeping time. Who's keeping time? Okay. Minute count. I can see myself. Madam Speaker, in the context where infiltrations into both Azad Kashmir as well as NWFP have now happened on a regular basis in the state of Pakistan, we take it upon ourselves to show you our burden today, which is first, that Pakistan is a failed state with respect to border control. Second, that there is a need, therefore, to privatize border control. And third, that there are certain unique benefits that arise from privatizing border control that the state cannot provide in their model, right? Let me talk to you about certain clarifications because before I talk to you about the four basic ideas in this debate. First, Madam Speaker, we'd like to make it really clear in the outset that no company in this model is going to be given a monopoly, right? So this doesn't mean that there's going to be one company all the time. We think that based on performances, the state does have the discretion to appoint new companies to within the sphere of border control itself. On the second idea, Madam Speaker, we think that accountability might become an issue in this debate, and we would like to clarify that with respect to the international obligations that the state of Pakistan owns, we believe that there is now the doctrine of effective control within international law that allows private bodies to represent the state in certain ways, right? So the state is still responsible for the actions of these private bodies because the state actively hires these private bodies and appoints these private bodies, right? So you still are liable for cross-border violations within international law, even though you privatize this sector, right? So we don't believe that these sectors are now just completely unaccountable. But on the third idea, Madam Speaker, we'd like to clarify that we will use, we don't mind linking the performance of these companies to the pay that they actually get, right, in this model. So that basically acts as an incentive for these companies to perform better in border control, an incentive that the state tangibly backs, right? But four ideas that we'd like to talk to you about in this debate. First, the present context of the state of Pakistan has shown us that it has failed border control. Second, privatization of border control will lead to increased efficiency. Third, privatization benefits the image of the state right now. And fourth, this move benefits inhabitants in border regions, extremely importantly. On the first idea about the present context of the state of Pakistan, Mr. Speaker, we understand that they're going to run sovereign function and tell us that the state should have, ideally, a monopoly over violence. But we tell you, Madam Speaker, that in the context of Pakistan, the state does not, in fact, have a monopoly over violence, and this monopoly has been taken over by infiltrators and rebel groups on a daily basis, right? We tell you this is really, really problematic, right? Sit down. We tell you that what infiltration is of two types right now in border regions, both into Pakistan as well as out of Pakistan, right? Madam Speaker, this is really important because Pakistan not only owes an obligation towards itself, but also towards its partners and like bordering countries in status quo, right? We tell you on both these counts, the military has been actively failing the state of Pakistan and like not been preventing infiltrations on a large scale basis, right? So we tell you that the image of the state is weakening in the eyes of the electorate itself, right? Tell you this is really, really problematic because the state has failed, does not command a monopoly over violence, and therefore there is a necessity to change status quo, right? We think this is really, really important to understand. What we're talking about is the military of Pakistan. They can't come here and tell us that this can be changed overnight, right? The military of Pakistan is a body within Pakistan that has been legitimized over years and years and has been given so much power that it's actually shocking, right? And that has reduced the accountability of the military in these regions itself. We think that new change in terms of private bodies will increase accountability and remove the legitimization and the authority that the military of Pakistan has commanded for so many years, right? Second, Madam Speaker, we believe that the privatization of broader control will lead to increased efficiency. And how? We think that more capital is definitely a benefit that these companies command, right? We think that because of more capital, there are better resources, better equipment, and better generally better functioning that will be employed by these private companies on border control, right? We think that because it is a technical specific function, this is required, and the military of Pakistan has been suffering through like immense financial shortage, and these private companies will definitely be able to tackle that problem, right? But we also tell you, Madam Speaker, that it will be more efficient because now these companies are also more accountable than the military was ever, right? First, Madam Speaker, we believe that we can still sue these companies for negligent acts, right? So, for example, the state of Pakistan still holds the discretion to sue the company for negligent acts during its performance of border control. And secondly, because the performance of these companies is linked to the amount of money they get, they now have an incentive to perform better, right? An incentive that never existed with the state in the first place. We also think that replacing these companies on when there are acts of negligence or when there is direct infiltration at a large scale means that they will necessarily perform better than what the military does in status quo, right? We think that alternatives won't work because the ideology is too deeply entrenched into this Pakistani military, and it has not worked for way too long in the context of Pakistan, right? But third, what do we tell you, Madam Speaker? We tell you that privatization also benefits the image of the state of Pakistan. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. In the context of Nawaz Sharif's efforts and the capturing of 12 ISI militants, is it a failing state or a failed state with regard to border security?
Sit down. We think that what matters for this debate is whether the state is going to do a better job with border security or whether private companies are going to do that. I don't think it's our burden to show you that Pakistan as a state has failed, because that's, I mean, while that's contested, that's not what this debate is about. It's whether border control in specificity is going to be better performed by one entity or another, right? But on the image of the state and how we think it definitely improves on our side of the house. Four responses to this, Madam Speaker. First, we think the state, very often, the state of Pakistan looks like it's complicit with a lot of the people who infiltrate into the borders, right? And that's one of the main problems with the state of Pakistan, right? Everyone, the electorate has started thinking that they're in fact complicit with these infiltrators. This allows them to delink themselves from the infiltrators in the first place, which we tell you is a really, really important benefit. And the state needs to stop looking complicit in the eyes of its people. Second, we tell you that the state now recognizes the dissatisfaction that exists amongst the electorate towards the military, right? And says that we understand that the stagnancy here is causing a problem and there is a need for change. That recognition in as dissatisfied an electorate as Pakistan is a really, really important thing. The third idea, we tell you, Madam Speaker, that there is an upsurge now in the electorate of Pakistan in favor of privatization and general capitalist tendencies, right? We tell you that this is really, really important to understand both at the middle class levels as well as lower and upper classes, right? Because there is so much dependence on the military and the state. Now people are really, really supporting the state when it in fact incurs moves of privatization. We tell you fourth that stagnancy is a problem that the Pakistani democracy faces, and this change will help the state in combating that image. We also lastly tell you that the immunity that state actors get in these regions often affect the people in these regions detrimentally. For example, in cases of sexual crimes, right? We think private actors will not have immunity in this regard, but state actors definitely do, right? Sanjit will elaborate more about this for you and tell you why this is really, really important, because the immunity and the legitimization of the state doesn't happen, and in fact you are held much more accountable for your acts towards people in these regions. Extremely proud to have opened this debate.
If everyone is ready. Can you hear me right? All right. Madam Speaker, what I'm primarily going to talk throughout the course of the speech is how outsourcing of sovereignty, what they exactly spoke about, is a major factor in this debate in terms of legitimization of violence come from the act of state, not from the act of private body. Then I'll also be dealing with the efficiency, what they're trying to talk about, right? In terms of efficiency, I'm attacking them on two things. On the capital which they're going to invest throughout this for these private bodies, and second thing, how this intelligence risk and lot of errors can occur in the private body when it can happen when you privatize these kind of border issues, right? And I'll also be talking about the flaw in their case when they come up and say that when you perform better, then you will have a more incentive in terms of getting more payment, right? What if a better terrorist organizations offer them a huge lump sum of money, then they will get paid off and then they will be bought off by these kind of organizations, right? So the incentive which they offer here is absolutely money. That doesn't work in their favor at all, because money can be offered by someone else who has a vested interest in Pakistan, which is a larger incentive, right? So it's an absolutely humongous problem when you come up and say that, yes, once you do that, we'll get more money. Then they're assuming this case on one assumption and one primary gamble, right? In the first minute of their Prime Minister's speech, they're coming up and saying that based on performances, we will input these kind of bodies in the border issues. This is a huge goddamn gamble for Pakistan right now, right? Look at Pakistan in global perspective, right? It's a failing state, it's not a failed state. We need to understand what Pakistan has been undergoing for the past 10 years, right? In terms of how they're catching terrorists in the past 5 years has risen from 67 to 72 according to Nawaz Sharif reports, right? And also I'll be talking about like how Pakistan can effectively not impute these kind of economic incentives towards this privatization of military funds, right? Let me give you slight context of this, how Pakistan is facing severe economic risk, okay? Since 1989 to 1990, after Benazir Bhutto's nationalization problems, in terms of like accumulating the national capital with the private capital, Pakistan stopped getting funding from the other countries and from the other contracts, right? And since they are not a completely globalized open economy, their funds started crashing. The GDP rate of Pakistan and the per capita income of Pakistan is reducing from 24% to 17% from the figures what we get in 2014, right? The only private body which hire mercenaries and keep armed forces in private ways are UN, because they have enough amount of funds right now, right? And apart from that, Pakistan don't have the amount of funds to input these kind of monetary transactions and buy these kind of private bodies to keep them into the power, right? Second thing, it's a runaway argument if you come up and say that private bodies will perform better because they get more money and they will be performing better. There are two problems with that, right? For example, handling these kind of intelligence and espionage matters is highly risk associated, and it can be highly problematic when a private body comes into picture, right? As I said, when you have a government body, it's associated with the government sector, and the government takes the complete blame and the responsibility here, right? Because the government is carrying out these kind of things. When a private body is allowing or carrying out these kind of things, it's highly problematic, because even the information loss in this volatile sector is a major problem, because more money can be bought in these kind of informations, right? And we cannot trust the technology and the efficiency of a private body, since it's a huge gamble, right? Moving on. Why especially privatizing after this? Why privatizing especially on border issues is a severe problem, right? Because Pakistan is having high border issues in terms of volatility, right? These are two things. A, in terms of legitimization of violence comes from the fact that the state is performing these kind of things, because the state have absolute authority over your military power, right? A, the moment private bodies started carrying out war crimes, as they mentioned, or any kind of brutality inside these kind of acts, then it's easy for the state to characterize them as by saying that they are not our bodies. Since they are private bodies, they can easily run away with these kind of assumptions, right? This is actually the weakening of political scenario. So this shouldn't happen after this for sure. This is a major problem what a government faces, right? Right in the 2012 Nawaz Sharif's ticket to election, what he offered, I am offering a legitimization of power from the people in itself, right? The moment Pakistan government started outsourcing its sovereignty by saying that we are going to run away from all the ISA attacks what been sponsored right now, because they have been sponsored by these private military border operations. Yes, the state government loses legitimacy on two grounds. A, where does the act of legitimacy comes from? In terms of how a theological democracy works in Pakistan. And second thing, on the benefit of who takes the blame upon that. Sure.
Isn't it a good thing for Pakistan if the crimes committed by these private bodies are not covered up by the state like they are in status quo?
Fundamentally, we have two problems with this. A, in terms of like how these war crimes are being treated in international front, right? What's the image of Pakistan in international spectrum right now? These are two fundamental issues, right? For example, the 2014 Mexican conference what Nawaz Sharif held was talking about how Pakistan's trump card for the next 5 years is going to be peace and global welfare, right? This is what we're thriving upon on their foreign policy and how they're going to protect inside Pakistan, right? So vouching on these kind of policies will be absolute failure if they come up and go against their own policies in itself, right? Second thing, there is fundamentally problem because what is the answer to the government, by the government to the people, if they come up and say that yes, we are going to run away with these kind of skewed characterizations because it's just ultimately a private body that been hired by these private border issues, and then we are carrying out these kind of crimes, right? Moving on, what is a major aspect of war crimes, right? Like this is as simple as possible. This is being heard by every debaters possibly. For example, these kind of border issues are being dealt with international court under the Geneva Convention, right? For example, the reason why Geneva Convention exists and why this war crimes have been treated because every state enters into an abstract contract with each other, and this is being treated globally, right? The moment you started privatizing these kind of border issues, then the victims, the evaluating of the victims here is highly problematic in terms of who should be taken in front of the court or who should be tried in front of the court, whether it's a private body or whether it's the Pakistan government completely responsible, right? They need to come and prove to us why running away with these kind of skewed characterization in the imaginary line is beneficial for the Pakistan government, because the government is losing its legitimacy in their forefront because of the crimes that's been happening inside the border lines from one point to the another, right? The major crux of this particular debate lies with the major factor that how this outsourcing of sovereignty is a major factor for the Pakistani government, right? Let me again break it down very simply, right? For example, Pakistan border issues is not only related to India-Pakistan. There are a lot of other issues, for example, including the refugee crisis and also the immigrants which are coming from one part to the other part of this country, right? For example, a government mechanism is much more broadened and can absorb these kind of issues in a much more efficient manner when it deals with refugees, when it deals with immigrants. But as well as when the private body has been dealing with this, it have a lot of red tape mechanisms they can need to under through in terms of taking a decision, right? Because arriving at a decision by a private body in terms of refugees and immigrants is highly problematic because they don't have an efficient system running upon them unless the government can have decided decision based on the cabinet power they have. With that, the opposition rests.
My answer to the burden of proof on side government today is fairly simple. We're going to show you that Pakistan will be a safer place under our model. Secondly, we're going to show you that the image of the Pakistani state will vastly improve and they will actually be viewed as a responsible state as opposed to a rogue state as they are in status quo under our model, right? I'm going to talk about two primary ideas in my speech. Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about the image of the Pakistani state and why the state can now be viewed as a responsible actor on the international platform. And secondly, I'm going to talk to you about the lives of inhabitants in these regions and why things like human rights violations and human rights abuses are far less likely to happen, and when they do, can be called out frequently and to a far greater degree on our side of the house, right? But before that, some quick rebuttal. I'm rebutting four ideas on their side of the house. Let's look at their first idea, the idea of how violence is only legitimate when it comes from the state and the fact that Pakistan is not a failed state, but it is a failing state, right? We have three responses to this. Firstly, we tell you that monopoly over violence, or the fact that only the state can ever exercise violence, is a flawed idea, right? We tell you that when the state has failed, it is perfectly okay for the state to lose control over that monopoly over violence, right? And this is where we recognize concepts like the right to self-defense of individuals, right? And this comes from the idea of the social contract. I have given up the right to protect myself and to protect my own borders to the state, right? And when the state fails to do that, and when the state fails in that obligation, I have no one else to turn to, right? And we tell you because of that, it is absolutely crucial for someone to take up this responsibility, and we believe that it will be done far better by private companies, right? But secondly, we tell you on their characterization that Pakistan is only a failing state because hey, they've got a couple of terrorists recently. We tell you that's not the metric for whether they're a failed state or not, right? Just because they have got some terrorists or they have got some infiltrators does not mean that overall as a trend they have completely and utterly failed to stop infiltration, right? We tell you the fact that infiltration is still a daily occurrence in these regions points to the fact that these states that this state has in fact failed, and the fact that like 1 or 2 times they've caught some terrorists does not mean that they've discharged this responsibility. Thirdly, we tell you that even if even if it is true that they are only failing, what matters is that they are perceived to be a failed state by their own people and by the rest of the international community, right? So we tell you that that argument still holds, and we tell you on our side of the house, this image actually shifts because Pakistan can now come out as a responsible person and say, listen, we have recognized that we have failed, we have recognized that we have been incompetent, and all this while it was only incompetence. It wasn't that we were actually complicit with these infiltrators and were letting them in, as some countries are alleging about Pakistan, right? So we tell you that overall the image of Pakistan drastically improves on our side of the house. But let's look at the second question of efficiency and whether efficiency will be better on our side, right? The first thing they said with regard to this idea is that Pakistan does not have enough money. And we tell you 2 things, right? Firstly, we tell you that that's simply not true. Like the sort of things they were talking about, it was clear that they were just throwing facts that they had no idea about, right? Like Pakistan's GDP growth rate has fallen from 24% to 17%. I mean, like the fastest growing economy has a GDP growth rate of like 7%. I don't know what they're talking about. But secondly, we tell you that even if money is a problem, it shouldn't be with respect to something as important as your borders, right? We tell you, we're sure that the people of Pakistan wouldn't mind like using taxpayer money for something like protecting their borders, which is fundamental to their very security and is a threat to their very existence, right? So we tell you that principally it's okay for us to funnel money from other areas into this because of the importance of this issue. And thirdly, we will be saving money by the fact that the military is not engaging in this directly, right? So whatever money you save from that, funnel it into this. But secondly, on this idea that there will be an intelligence threat because these people will just sell information to terrorists for more money, we say 2 things with respect to this, right? A, we tell you that it's not far better off on your side. The fact that the state hasn't been able to control the military, the fact that there are allegations that the military itself is ideologically linked to these terrorist groups means that that possibility isn't completely erased on your side of the house, right? But secondly, we tell you that these private bodies in fact have more accountability. The fact that they can be sued for negligence, the fact that they can be sued for treason or sedition if they sell information to other terrorists, these are not things that you can do to the state or the military, right? So we in fact think that accountability is far greater on this side of the house. But thirdly, on the idea of human rights violations and whether they will be more or less, right? They've told us that like, oh, you know, private bodies, they will just abuse people because hell, they're private bodies. But we say 2 things with respect to this, right? The first response we have is that at the end of the day, the military in Pakistan today has too much power. When the military commits human rights violations in these regions, nobody can take them to account simply because of how powerful they are. They cannot be checked by other organs within the state. They cannot be dissented against by the people in those regions, which means that dissent against the military when human rights violations happen is practically impossible. But we tell you that with private companies, that's not true. They're not going to be as powerful as the military, right? And his dissent is probably going to be far easier. This private company can probably be checked by the other state organs, something that isn't happening with the military right now. But the second response we have is that even when these human rights violations do occur, the state no longer has an incentive to cover it up. And they literally gave us this argument when they said that the state can just say, oh, you know, it wasn't us, it was these private companies. Which means that, like right now, in status quo, the state has an active incentive to cover up these human rights violations when they happen because the state looks bad, right? The fact that these violations can be attributed to the state. But when they can say that it was the incompetence of a private company, these are far less likely to be covered up. On the idea of immigrants, a very trivial issue, we tell you that that's a policy decision, right? Like if you want to cut down on red tape, that can be a policy decision and it can be executed by this private company. That's a really trivial argument to bring up. But on the idea of the image of the Pakistani state, right? We tell you that Pakistan is currently not just viewed as a failed state, but is also suspected and accused of being complicit in helping out with this infiltration, right? And they're viewed as an irresponsible rogue state. We tell you this allows Pakistan to de-link themselves from this process of infiltration and say, listen, it was just incompetence. competence, we recognize that we have failed and we take responsibility for it. We are trying to make the situation better. We think Pakistan comes off as a more responsible and better looking state. But secondly, we tell you that the lives of inhabitants in these regions are vastly improved. They now no longer have like the military controlling their lives, an organization that they can never dissent against, an organization that can never be checked. We tell you that cases of human rights violations and abuse are far less likely to be covered up, unlike status quo where the state has an active incentive to cover these up because they just look bad when they come out. So ladies and gentlemen, because we believe that the people in Pakistan will be safer, because we believe that the countries around Pakistan will be safer because of lesser infiltration from Pakistan to them, because we believe that the Pakistani state simply looks much better on our side of the house, we are very proud this time.
Yeah? Mr. Speaker, the focus of what is a better military or what is better ways to protect the border is not a physical implementation issue. We think it's an issue of image and an issue of symbol and the way in which this country is going to be perceived when they go ahead and act. Therefore, there are three actors that are important. One is the military man who will go ahead and act, and therefore the obligations and the symbols that are created around his action. And secondly, the way in which the private company would be perceived if they act, if they don't act. Yeah. Firstly, before any argument, we think that it is really tough for the nation to come back and say that we want to remove this private military and bring back the other military, because they've already conceded with the argument that we were not working enough and therefore we set up a private sector to be able to do it. Therefore, we think that the amount of risk that we take to be able to function in this form is something that is problematic. Therefore, there is no opt-in mechanism back into the system, because you have conceded with this argument that the monopoly of violence that I had, which made me the sovereign authority, it was not legitimate. Therefore, I'm creating a private body. Therefore, we had a problem with the argument of them characterizing Pakistan as a failed state, because their understanding of a failed state is that your sovereign authority isn't legitimate at all now. That is when Musharraf took over power, the constitution was not legitimate anymore, and there was a new creation of power by the coup that he did. We think that a failed state is very different from a failing one, where there are emerging problems like the ISI, like the other terrorists. We think that these terrorists are being caught. Secondly, the military leader of the Pakistan last month was called to India for bilateral talks with regard to solving the problems of terrorism. He has gone to the UN and had bilateral talks with regard to solving the problems of catching people who are ISI agents, etc. There have been people who are foreign of the foreign police departments deployed to be able to control these kinds of scenarios in Pakistan, etc. No, Pakistan recently conceded with the fact that Ajmal Kasab was in fact a Pakistani national, etc. They are making public statements which are trying to fix the foreign image that Pakistan has in the world today. Two images that they have. One, that they are running away from the issue by making two arguments. No. By one, that they were a non-state actor, they are terrorists, we have no responsibility. So that is the rhetoric that Pakistan uses. The people who attacked you or did the cross-border firing were not military men, they were non-state actors, they are terrorists, therefore we are not responsible. This is the same thing where you hire a private sector force to be able to battle or to be able to take care of the border security issues or to be able to maintain the problems of terrorism in that place. We think that the problems are that they're going to have a better argument. That is, that's not our obligation to be able to answer you, because we don't know the statistics, we don't know how this really panned out, we don't know who sold the information, we don't know how did they infiltrate, because we were not responsible. Therefore, we think that the state should at all points of time have absolute control over the functioning of the military, especially at border situations, because each and every issue at the border becomes an international issue, and the number of deaths is not as important as the loss of legitimacy of the state that happens because of the way those deaths are portrayed. Therefore, when a private body fucks up and when a public state body fucks up, we think there are different ways in which we look at it. The simple example is a policeman will give you a chance, will read out your Miranda rights to you. because he has an obligation to respect your dignity. Therefore, the means and the ends are equally respected, and that is the way the state gets its legitimacy from. That is when its monopoly over violence is exercised in a way which is in consistency with its means and the ends. Therefore, we think that a private sector body is not doing the same, because it in no way has an incentive to be good to you or to be good to a refugee who is jumping the fence, or anybody who crossed the border, because they think that security is the first the first obligation that they have towards the state. Therefore, shoot him down. And this is what happens in Mexico, where they privatized the borders, where the US went ahead and created a force and privatized the border. And the economic argument isn't really that bad, because the US has 50% privatized forces, and the amount they need to be able to fund that kind of a force is 5 times that of any other country in the world. For Pakistan to be able to do this post an economic crisis since the 2000 is something that's just not possible. No. Thirdly, the argument that he makes is that there exists some kind of efficacy that will include that will improve, so there'll be better human rights, so there'll be no human rights violations or something of that sort. Yeah. We think that human rights violations happen because of brutality that comes from you possessing the gun, and not from the fact that you are a military man. We don't think that a military man rape because they are from the military, but because they have the gun and they think they can get away with it. We think that the reasons for war rapes and all these other cross-border atrocities are not the fact that you have hatred towards the other community, or you want to take away the honor of the woman because I'm a Pakistani coming into your territory and taking away your honor. It is not that rhetoric at all. It is the idea that I have the chance at this point of time to be able to get away because I have the gun at that point of time. Therefore, we think that this kind of absolute power that is given to a private sector organization is much easily corruptible than a public one. One reason, because if you are caught dead in a uniform and I found your body, I'll be able to take out the identity card and and release news saying that a Pakistani national was caught crossing the border and firing at the border or anything of that sort. Yeah, but the point of people without having a national uniform getting caught is a problem, that there exists a distance between the state's obligation towards that person and the obligation of the state towards the private sector company. Therefore, if the private sector company at any point of time fucks up, we don't think that you can ever do anything apart from replacing that by a better private sector company. And we think that that won't solve the problem either. Even if you get a better private sector company, it's not going to be able to create an image of you solving the problems of terrorism on the border, because Pakistan isn't doing it. A company is doing it for Pakistan, because Pakistan isn't able to do the same. And thirdly, if Pakistan is a failed state, we don't think they have a national culture of privatization too, because it is a failed state. Yeah, go for it, whatever. Yeah? You can go for it. Okay. Okay. Mr. Speaker, we think that the legitimacy of the use of force is a real important central issue to this debate. Because we think that the legitimate authority to be able to cross the border and assassinate a terrorist only lies with a person who is a man in the uniform. Because of two reasons. One, the legitimate use of force at that point of time has been given to you by the state authority to be able to do that particular thing. Therefore, we think that if I hire a mercenary, it is not of the same symbolic value as if I send a man who is in uniform. Because the impact that Pakistan really needs today is the fact that they're trying to solve the problem. Because even if they're trying to solve the problem, we'll give them all the funds to be able to do it. Or every other country will help them solve the problems with China on the border, with India on the border, or anything of that sort. But if the time they privatize it, they have no rhetoric to argue against the international community with regard to the fact that Pakistan really is making an effort, and privatizing is not the symbol of making an effort. For all these reasons, we are proud to oppose.
Madam Speaker, the only case that we have received from opposition so far has been ridiculously rudimentary, and it's appalling that in the semi-finals of this debate, that's the case we get, right? All that they've come and told us so far is that the only reason that the military in Pakistan, and mind you, the military that they haven't engaged with us in the characterization of this military itself, the abuses committed by the military, the kind of dissatisfaction that people in Pakistan, this house being Pakistan, has with the military, no engagement at all. But this military itself, the only reason that they should have control over their borders is because it is apparently a sovereign function, and they think that's where it ends, right? But beyond this side, the house have given you enough and more analysis on why this debate is just not that, right? Let me move on to the themes of this debate. Analyze the clashes and then tie in my rebuttal to some really ridiculous assertions made by the DLO in thematizing this debate, right? Two primary themes. One, what is this principle with regard to monopoly over violence, and how does that play out in the field of border control, particularly in Pakistan? And two, how is efficiency of border control met, and what are the consequences of privatizing border control itself, right? On the first idea of the principle, all, as I said, we have gotten from this side of the house is that it's a sovereign function, and therefore it's okay for the state to go ahead and perform it, right? But we gave you a bunch of responses to this regard. We said that first, the state has been failing, and as far as border control is concerned, Pakistan is a failed state with regard to how effective border control is. So when that side of the house comes and gives you one instance of when, like, hey, 12 infiltrants were caught, that's not an indication of how effective the state is when it comes to discharging this really, really important function that both sides of the house concede to, right? But when it comes to how to discharge this function itself, when clearly the state has failed, you cannot come here and tell us that no, we will revert this function, the excess of the function back to the military itself. And why can they not come here and do that? Only because the characterization we have given you on how problematic the military itself is in Pakistan was not taken after fight. We've given you enough and more analysis on the amount of abuse committed by the military itself. We've told you the amount of power they possess. We've told you the amount of dissatisfaction that people have with the military. We've told you that in fact the military has for so long been committing a bunch of violations and has given the state the opportunity to cover it up and not be responsible for these violations. And in light of these glaring, like, the omissions by the military itself, we tell you that it's not okay for you to come here and tell us that no, the solution now is to just go back to the military and let them continue manning the borders, because we've told you it's clearly not working for so long. So we have come here and established to you the need as to why we need to move away from the military and why in fact privatization is the way to go, right? But more importantly, the other thing that they came here and told us is that you cannot, once you have privatized, you cannot opt back into the military being your now border controller. We tell you we're okay with that idea. Why are we okay with it? Only because A, for all the benefits that we've outlined, privatization of this border control is more effective, and B, in fact, contrary to what they've been telling you through two speeches, it's in fact a more accountable and responsible manner for the state to adopt, right? Because the state will still continue to be held responsible for the acts, and the state will still be accountable to the people for the acts that they commit itself, right? And a bunch of other benefits. But let's move on to where this debate actually did have a bunch of engagement on the efficiency and consequences of privatizing border control itself, right? One area of engagement is whether there will in fact be control over these private parties and what kind of accountability will the state have. They came and told you that if the state continues to perform this function, there will in fact be more accountability. We on this side of the house have continued to tell you how no, in fact, that is merely an excuse for the state to continue covering up the violations that they themselves perform, right? And we're not okay with the idea. We're not okay with the idea of the state legitimizing the violations that their own state actors perform under the guise of the immunity that is given to them, right? We're not okay with the state endorsing these ideas and allowing them to get away with absolutely no response. How does that pan out when you have private parties who control your border? There is more accountability because A, you can sue these private contractors for negligence. B, they are still criminally responsible within your domestic jurisdiction. And C, even internationally, the state still continues to exercise effective control over their acts, right? Which means even in the international sphere, it's not as if Pakistan has washed its hands of these private border controls and has absolutely no responsibility towards them. But in fact, the doctrine of effective control applies. And therefore, when they come here and tell you things like for information leak and security breaches, oh, what will Pakistan now do? We tell you that that's really not the case, because when you do establish effective control under international law, you will be held responsible and accountable for the same, and you will take these considerations into account, right? But what was the next consequence of privatizing?
Last.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, what is stopping any other country who's getting affected by this organization to call them terrorists in the absence of a state symbol of Pakistan attached with them?
Right. Right, so this is my response to it, right? When the state goes ahead and tells you that no, the military is not going to man borders, but private entities are going to man them, it's okay because the state still exercises some form of control over them, because these private parties are still bound by criminal rules, still bound by, the state is still bound by international law, and there is absolutely no loss of accountability, responsibility, or any of the other harms that they've been pointing out, right? In fact, Madam Speaker, what needs to be noted is all the harms that they're pointing out are exacerbated in their model itself. It's exacerbated when the military continues to exercise control over borders, and we tell you that in our model, none of these harms are in fact involved, but only unique benefits come out of it, right? But what's been the next consequence of this move? This idea of human rights violations and how we will have absolutely no control over these human rights violations, right? We tell you that in fact, these private players have more of an incentive than the military to be good to people and to adhere to human rights themselves, right? Why is that? Because they will lose the contract if they don't. These are competitive firms who are governed by market forces, who recognize that they are getting some sort of a profit from the state, and who will adhere to these norms so they continue to have this contract with the state, right? We also tell you that it's a comparative with the military that we need to draw in this case, and the burden on that side of the house is to come and tell us why all of these harms with privatization that they're talking about either does not exist with the military, or if it does, can be countered far better with the military, neither of which will happen, right? We tell you for all these reasons, therefore, even with human rights violations, it's far better tackled on our side of the house than their side of the house, right? But third, the idea of efficiency and how there will be a better discharge of duties. We've told you repeatedly how there is more accountability by the state when it comes to private players. We've told you how there's in fact incentive for private players to act better than the military. We've told you there's absolutely no scope for cover-ups, which happens when the military is still in control of your border control, and therefore there will be a more efficient discharge of duties. But lastly, the idea of the image of the Pakistani state itself and what it means. We told you that in the international sphere, as far as being a responsible state is concerned, right? And here's where that Kasab example becomes really important. They come here and tell you that when Pakistan recognizes and says that yes, Kasab was from Pakistan, they're being responsible. We are also being responsible when we tell countries across the world that yes, we recognize that our military is not being efficient, and we recognize the importance of border control, and we're being really strong when we put private players in charge there and are more accountable with these private players, right? But even domestically, we give in to the demands of our electorate when they tell us that we want more privatization, that we're dissatisfied and disillusioned with our military, and we want things to change. And when private parties can bring that change, we see nothing stopping the state from giving it these demands, right? Extremely proud proposed.
Who's keeping that? Just can you ensure that I get like a clear minute count? Just that I notice minute count. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, please wait. Thanks. Sure, sir. Right. Just one second. Madam Speaker, one man's terrorist is another man's hero. The problem is you can only call him a terrorist when there is no state symbol attached to that man. There is a reason why everybody calls Palestinians terrorists. That is because you don't recognize them as a state. As soon as you place an individual with a gun who has no accountability because he has no state symbol attached to that individual, he can do whatever the fuck they want because they are accountable to that institution, which is a private company, and not the institution which is the military, and not the institution which is an extension of the state, and therefore that is the issue, right? We tell you that in this debate, we've turned the metric of efficiency from not just being a regulation, but also the kind of symbolic value of efficiency and how that translates into the image, right? So when they take two burdens in their DPM speech, which is one, that Pakistan will be a safer place, and two, that image will be better, and they provide very shallow analysis for that, negligent in their whip speech, I'll tell you how they don't stand, right? But coming to how all of their points, and I'll depart them one by one, right? First of all, the idea of this perceived incompetence, right? And they tell you that because Pakistan has a perceived incompetence, we will now take responsibility by placing individuals who are private institutions in place of ourselves, right? We tell you that that is the problem with your competence, right? The fact that you cannot deal with it on your own and have to place someone else to take care of it for you means that you are accepting your incompetence, and in that position you are doing nothing to fix your own incompetence, because at no point of time will now you be held accountable. At every point of time when the private institution fucks up, you just replace the private institution with another one. So at that point of time, there is no constance of an actual change in the way that the ethic of your military actually functions, because that functionality needs to come from an ethic which you develop of actually bringing about certain kinds of tolerance within your military and the kind of transparency within your military. When you tell your military that you are no longer accountable because you will have somebody else who will now be constantly accountable and they can be constantly replaced and changed, what incentive does the military have to now even give a shit about anything that they're actually questioned about? Because now they will constantly say, I'm not the one doing this, there's just some border control facility called XYZ that did this, and therefore I am no longer responsible, right? And when they talk about image, we give you rebuttals and they don't engage with that. They try to trivialize that. We tell you that the rebuttal to image is that Pakistan is trying to change that kind of, say, discourse in the international spectrum, right? We tell you that they're constantly coming out and making statements and taking responsibility and trying to get this thing back to their own state, right? And therefore, sit down. Fifth minute. We tell you that that is a kind of engagement that they need to actually deal with and not just say, nahi, image ka problem hai, right? Secondly, they tell you money is an issue because why? Right now you have some GDP shit, yeah? I'm telling you that America has a large chunk of its military which is privatized, and it has 5 times the kind of resource that it allocates to military than a lot of other countries combined, right? There is a reason why Pakistan is so fucked, and that is that it doesn't have an economic stability in its own country, that its currency is devaluing, that its kinds of, say, trade problems and the kind of infiltration problems that it has gone ahead and fucked up its economy. How do you go ahead and justify the replacement of anything else through social welfare to going ahead and doing this is something that to justify? How do you get that kind of efficacy in practice, right? But coming to the idea of this military cover-up, right? We tell you that, listen, when the military covers up, you think that the military is covering up. Right? When the international media questions you, you say that the Pakistan state, sit down, 5th minute, the Pakistan state military has done this brutality and they are therefore responsible. When in your position, what you do is, the international media says Pakistan state military is no longer even in that particular article because some XYZ private company did this, and that is what will be held accountable and not the private and not the Pakistani military. And that is the problem, because the ethic that you try to develop, sit down, the ethic that you try to develop of actually going ahead and changing your military scenario in your country is problematic in their stance, because they have not provided any change. They've just provided a stopgap measure of having someone else take responsibility, right? And coming to the idea of this idea, sit down, 5th minute, yeah? Coming to the idea of the private being corruptible, right? We tell you that, listen, the private company has no incentive other than money, and that was their first speech, right? They tell you the private company has incentive of money, and therefore they will do everything because we will pay them, and they will do better because we will pay them more. So what is it that's stopping them from being bought off by other individuals and other institutions who will also pay them much, much better and much higher to go ahead and leak things in terms of information, in terms of technology? Sit down, 5th minute, in terms of, I'll take it later. In terms of technology, in terms of practice, in terms of actually just leaving their military and joining with someone else, right? There's no engagement at all with these points, yeah? But, yeah.
Do you think the symbolic value of the state is only intact when the state does something, or can the state also exercise effective control on bodies it actively hires?
Listen, 2 things, okay? When the state is actually exercising control on bodies it hires, tell me how the state will not then influence those bodies' functionings also. Because if you're telling them that the state has so much control control over private bodies, then it will also be accountable. Then tell me why the state won't manipulate the functioning of the private body as well. If you're saying the state is doing that right now, why won't it manipulate the kind of information that comes out of the private body? Why won't it manipulate the kind of functioning of the private body? Why won't it do that shit, right? And that is the dichotomy in your case. But in the second place, where they don't have that kind of responsibility and accountability, then it is displacing its kind of responsibility and placing it on a private company. And that is where A, efficacy falls, therefore Pakistan is no longer a safer place, and 2, image falls because now it is not being critiqued at all, right? The image of Pakistan remains what it was, right? Because it is never questioned as an image of Pakistan, it is questioned as an image of XYZ private company, right? And that is the problem in this particular debate, right? And we tell you, listen, it needs to look like Pakistan is actually solving the problem. That is the idea of sovereignty over violence, over sovereignty or ownership over any kind of violence and discourse, right? Because at the point of time when you have a Pakistani military man holding a gun, he will be responsible, and therefore by extension can also be court-martialed, can also be thrown out, or whatever the shit can happen, right? But the problem is that that military man is an extension and a direct representation of the state, right? They need to prove to us that the private company will also be that. In 3 speeches, they have done nothing like that, because they give 2 cases. One, when the state will also be constantly influencing, then tell me how your move is actually efficacious. And 2, when the state is distancing itself, in which case image has no impact, and Pakistan also remains the same fucked up place because the private company has incentive of money, and that is why we rest our case.
Mr. Speaker, Pakistan has had a history of creating its national identity in juxtaposition with India in a very militarized fashion. They have named their nuclear warhead Ghori and the second one Ghajini, both of them who looted India in the past. Yeah? The understanding of this is that they look at India and make their identity in juxtaposition to each other in a very militarized fashion. They resolve and they come down to military tools to be able to understand their national identity and create an understanding of what does it mean to be a Pakistani. Therefore, we think that the military is intrinsically linked with the state and the idea of state for Pakistan. And we believe that in a scenario where you have state responsibility as an issue, we think symbols of state responsibility come with it, like that of Ghori Ghajini and like that of who is the military man in Pakistan. We think that the reason why the military coup happened in Pakistan is because of the amount of faith people had on the military to be able to protect them, etc. This gave them illegitimate amount of power. And what is their solution to this kind of a model where people have placed their faith over the military in symbolic fashions constantly? Efficacy, yeah? And this is retarded. The question that they answer is, how is this more efficacious? By saying that there will be lesser human rights violations and we'll be able to do it better. We think that even if you're doing it better by 10 to 20%, it's not going to change what Pakistan is or what the border looks like for anybody in the world, apart from those 20 circumstances where you perform better. We think that an understanding of what the effect is of the border on the nation and on the international community comes with who the actors are at the border, the military man who is a Pakistani and the terrorist who he caught. We think that in this scenario it looks more like state-sponsored terrorism rather than the state going ahead and solving terrorism, because in this scenario it looks as if the state is going ahead and creating another body to be able to solve a problem that it's not being able to solve itself by giving it more number of guns. We think that the excessive number of guns that we would give to itself would also create a different sense of what does it mean to be a Pakistani. Because it's not only a military rule or Nawaz Sharif anymore, but who is protecting us is a private body. Who is protecting us are these private security guards with guns. And to be able to understand what this failing state is and where is it going, we have no symbol to attach ourselves to. And we think there is more loss of faith in their case than in ours if it is a question of efficacy. Secondly, if it is a question of human rights protection, we think that the liability and accountability that is created through international charters are the ones that make people responsible. That is, even if the private company is held responsible and they're called to the Supreme Court and people hold them responsible, we think that it's not going to stop it or improve anything. It improves when the state is held responsible at an international level that they did not prevent these atrocities. And you would not be able to track this vicariously back to the state if you don't have a state connection or agency. This soldier is the agent of the state. The private company is not a direct agent of the state. They have a contract with the state. Therefore, the state is not directly liable in the international community for the efficacy of these people. It is the private corporations that are liable for their performance at that place. Therefore, we think that they're distancing themselves from the problem more and more. Like the rhetoric of what Pakistan is, that they're non-state actors, they're not terrorists, they aren't military men, we aren't firing on the cross-border, it is not us, it is somebody else, it's not my fault, and this is the same thing that they do. And even if it is not, it looks like that. It looks like state-sponsored terrorism. And we have a problem with the way it is being perceived, because in a scenario where you are already engaging in bilateral talks to be able to solve these problems and people are ready to come and solve civil terrorism problems inside your own country, we think that creating another body just looks as if you're running away from the problem. Yeah? We think that this looks and this symbol is something that's going to change an understanding of what are the efforts that Pakistan is making towards the problem of terrorism. We think that Pakistan needs to take responsibility, at least symbolically. For all these reasons, we are proud to oppose.
Madam Speaker, what it means to be Pakistani is understanding that the military is too powerful, is understanding that the military has failed to protect you, is understanding that there is such a distinction between the state and the military that the state can no longer control the military and the military has become a law unto itself, and this is something that has to be changed in certain regions, right? 4 questions. 1, will private companies still have to adhere to certain norms like cross-border violations, etc.? 2, will Pakistan be a safer place under our model? 3, will the image of the Pakistani state be better? And 4, where is accountability greater, right? Let's look at the idea of private companies and having to adhere to certain norms. They're just asserting from this side of the house that private companies are private and hence they can never be held accountable. They are not a part of the state, right? Like literally the first thing we spoke to you about in this debate is the concept of attributability within international law, right? The idea of vicarious liability. The fact that if a state hires someone to perform a state function and that someone fucks up, the state will still be liable, right? And this idea that, they will just shoot down Mexicans or shoot down people without following actual norms is really ridiculous, because this private company will still have to adhere to these norms because they are still a part of the state, and this whole symbolic value of whether they are a part of the state or not is simply just redundant because they are, right? So let's look at the other idea they had within this, that like, oh, these border forces will be viewed as terrorists because they're private companies. Again, false, right? We tell you there is an active association between the state and this private company, and this private company is very much considered a part of the state, right? This concept of vicarious liability. The state is not just like this tiny one organ of like the government and everything else, right? We tell you that every company the state hires, every function that the state delegates to to a body is still subsumed within the concept of the state. And being law students, I don't understand how they are contesting ideas like this, right? But then they said that people won't want it because they want this violence to be exercised by a state body. Again, we tell you this is false, right? In fact, we tell you that what people in Pakistan Pakistan want is for this violence to be taken finally away from the military and given to what they might consider a more responsible organization, right? So we tell you that that is just false characterization. But let's look at the second question on will Pakistan be safer, right? We told you the sort of incentives that will exist for this private company to do a better job than the state. Incentives that are monetary, performance-based pay. So incentives that basically don't exist for the state, right? And they conceded in their reply speech that like this efficiency will go up, maybe it'll only be 10 or 20%. I don't know where they get these numbers from. It's been throwing around the entire debate, right? But yeah, they've conceded that the situation will get better. What did they have a problem with? They had a problem with money and intelligence threats, right? We told you money isn't a problem. States prioritize all the time. They siphon off money into things that they consider important. But second, if you think money is so important, then hell, get aid from other countries to do this, man. Like the image of Pakistani state will still be better. I'm sure like you can get aid in order to do this. We don't think money is an issue. But on the idea of intelligence threats, right? Again, two responses that they never engaged in. We told you that the military itself can be an intelligence threat, right? We tell you that you can't ideologically divorce the military as an organization from these terrorist groups, right? And the fact that the government is not able to control the military means that this threat is very much possible on the part of the military too. No engagement from this side of the house. Secondly, we told you that private companies can be held accountable under laws like treason and sedition, which you can't do with the state or the military. Again, absolutely no engagement from this side of the house, right? Let's look at the third question. Is the image of the Pakistani state going to be better? We told you that they'll no longer be seen as complicit in infiltration. They are owning up to their incompetence and they will look as a more responsible state. The only thing they said is that, oh, they're already trying to look like a more responsible state. They're beginning to take claim responsibility for all the mess ups they've done. We tell you, great, right? Like, yeah, this will just add to that, and they will now look more responsible than they are on your side. We think we win that argument. On the idea of accountability and human rights violations, we tell you that the military can never be held to account on human rights violations, right? These articles that you were talking about will never be written about the military in Pakistan because people are too scared of them. This won't happen with a private company that is divorced from the military. Second, there will no longer be cover-ups because states won't be incentivized to protect their image. We are very, very proud to stand in government.